The question of whether the United States will intervene in Venezuela has been definitively answered not by diplomatic rhetoric, but by the physical deployment of overwhelming military power. The situation has transitioned from a threat of sanction to the brink of kinetic action. The Trump administration has executed an unprecedented military buildup, a strategic action that is the functional equivalent of the order to attack. This operation, officially christened Operation Southern Spear, is masquerading as a counter-narcotics mission, but the nature and scale of the deployed forces confirm the true objective: immediate regime change against Nicolas Maduro. This is FPV Explainer, where we break down the most fascinating stories in drone warfare, global affairs, and US domestic politics. If you're enjoying this deep dive, hit the like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us what topic you want to see next. Your feedback shapes our future videos and keeps us bringing you clear, detailed analysis from the front lines. Also, please watch this video to the very end, even if you play it in the background without sound, as your continuous viewing is critical to help promote the truth about the war. The deployment itself is a shocking display of force, the largest concentration of American naval and air assets in the Caribbean basin since the 1994 intervention in Haiti. This is a clear signal that the time for mere rhetoric is over. At the heart of Operation Southern Spear lies the most powerful naval asset in the world, the USS Gerald R. Ford Strike Group. The Ford, the Navy's newest and most technologically advanced nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, has been deliberately repositioned to the region, providing an overwhelming platform for sustained aerial bombardment and intelligence gathering. The presence of the Ford carrying its full complement of advanced fighter jets and electronic warfare aircraft removes any doubt that the US is prepared to dominate the airspace above Venezuela. This colossal display of conventional might is reinforced by specialized capabilities essential for a rapid regime change scenario. The strike group is accompanied by multiple Aegis-equipped destroyers, armed with precision cruise missiles designed to immediately neutralize Venezuela's Russian-supplied S-300 air defense system. Furthermore, Trump's Department of War has committed a significant contingent of advanced F-35 Lightning II stealth fighters and strategic B-52 bombers, ensuring that the air assault will be executed with maximum lethality and minimum warning. Crucially, the entire logistical framework is geared toward a quick, surgical ground action. The US has reactivated the former military base Roosevelt Roads in Puerto Rico, transforming it into a major air and logistical hub. More tellingly, the deployment includes the MV Ocean Trader, a vessel specifically configured to act as a clandestine base for US Special Operations Forces. The presence of these specialized assets is a clear indicator that the plan extends beyond aerial bombardment. It points directly to the decapitation phase, the high-risk, high-reward operation to capture or eliminate Nicolas Maduro and his inner circle. The entire strategic setup is designed for a rapid, decisive victory to seize control of the nation's immense oil reserves and strategically undermine the global position of Putin. The unprecedented military deployment near Venezuela is not justified solely by the need to combat drug trafficking. That narrative, while politically potent, serves as a transparent legal pretext for a far more ambitious and destabilizing doctrine. The true driving objective behind the Trump administration's operation is a strategic imperative: immediate regime change against Nicolas Maduro and the subsequent acquisition of control over the world's largest proven oil reserves. The official justification, the focus on narco-terrorism, and the $50 million bounty placed on Maduro's head is designed for domestic political consumption, appealing to the public's fear of the fentanyl crisis. However, the real prize is geopolitical and economic. Venezuela possesses a colossal wealth of oil, resources that have been largely inaccessible to the global market due to the regime's mismanagement and international sanctions.
For the US and its corporate interests, opening these vast fields is a strategic priority, one that promises immense profit while simultaneously achieving a critical secondary goal: flooding the global oil market to collapse prices and thereby dealing a decisive financial blow to the regime of Putin. The military scenario is meticulously calculated for a quick, decisive victory, recognizing that a prolonged engagement would be politically disastrous for Trump. The entire operation is designed to minimize ground troop exposure by focusing on a strategy of decapitation. The attack is anticipated to unfold in phases. The first phase is suppression and shock. The initial barrage will be a rapid, overwhelming assault of precision missile and aerial strikes launched from the carrier strike group and destroyers. The non-negotiable targets are those necessary to blind the regime: radar installations, communications hubs, known command and control bunkers, and the remaining Russian-supplied S-300 air defense sites. The objective is to achieve total air dominance within the first few hours, crippling the Venezuelan military's ability to coordinate any resistance and setting the stage for the next phase. The second and most critical phase is decapitation. This ground component is designed to prevent the conflict from devolving into a costly, protracted insurgency. Following the aerial bombardment, specialized forces operating covertly from assets like the MV Ocean Trader will be tasked with the high-risk mission of capturing or eliminating Nicolas Maduro and his most loyal inner circle. This surgical strike is intended to create a sudden political vacuum at the center of the regime, causing the military's loyalty to fracture and leading to the immediate collapse of the command structure. The third phase is consolidation and resource control. With the political leadership neutralized, a limited ground force will quickly secure critical infrastructure, focusing entirely on the nation's key oil refineries and export terminals. The entire plan is a high-stakes kinetic gambit. Use overwhelming short-duration force to seize the nation's resource wealth, solve a major geopolitical headache, and deliver a strategic economic victory against Putin, all under the legal veneer of counter-narcotics warfare.
We have analyzed the kinetic plan for regime change. Now we must confront the central tactical reality that makes this operation viable. Venezuela's air defense shield, primarily composed of Russian-supplied weaponry, is exposed as a hollow, structurally compromised deterrent. This is not a balanced military contest. It is a rapid technological exercise designed to demonstrate the overwhelming obsolescence of Maduro's arsenal. The fundamental flaw lies not in the original Russian design of the equipment, but in the years of decay imposed by corruption and chronic logistical failure. Maduro's military relies on the formidable reputation of systems like the S-300 long-range surface-to-air missile batteries and the thousands of Igla-S man-portable air defense systems purchased from Putin's government. On paper, this inventory suggests a capable defense. In reality, the Venezuelan military is suffering from a structural collapse. Crippling sanctions have severed the supply of crucial spare parts, while decades of state corruption and economic mismanagement have ensured that maintenance schedules are ignored, and technical proficiency has drastically declined. The army is operating with an arsenal that is structurally breaking down, functionally incapable of fighting a modern, high-intensity war. This material degradation sets the stage for a profoundly unequal technological contest. The sheer might of the U.S. deployment, spearheaded by the F-35 stealth fighters, and the precision of the USS Gerald R. Ford's integrated cruise missile systems, is specifically tailored to dismantle a static, Russian-style defense. The high-tech, integrated suppression of enemy air defense capabilities of the U.S. force ensure that the location of the Russian-supplied S-300 sites is known, and these centralized nodes will be the targets of the immediate, overwhelming opening salvo. The Venezuelan air defense is strategically obsolete against the primary threat.
The S-300 batteries, while once state-of-the-art, are vulnerable to electronic warfare and saturation tactics. The Eagle-S manpads are designed to counter low-flying aircraft and helicopters, rendering them functionally useless against high-velocity, precision-guided cruise missiles launched from outside their range, or against stealth fighters operating with impunity at high altitude. The U.S. military does not need to fly into the range of portable missiles. It can destroy the command structure of the regime from beyond the horizon. The guarantee of U.S. air dominance within the first few hours of the operation is the single most critical factor for the entire regime change doctrine. The structural weaknesses, the corruption, the lack of spare parts, and the demoralization of the army ensure that the defense shield will be quickly pierced, guaranteeing a rapid collapse of Venezuelan military cohesion and paving the way for the special forces teams to execute the decapitation phase. The collapse of this Russian-supplied shield is the ultimate measure of how the Venezuelan state has failed to convert oil wealth into lasting security.
We have analyzed the kinetic plan and the failure of Venezuela's air defense. Now we confront the final crushing reality for Nicolas Maduro. He is strategically and unequivocally alone. His desperate appeals for military aid from his primary international partners, Putin's Russia, China, and Iran, have been met not with decisive military support, but with cautious diplomatic silence. This geopolitical isolation is the ultimate evidence that the threat of secondary sanctions and the fear of direct confrontation with the United States are powerful weapons, leaving the regime defenseless against the overwhelming military force arrayed against it. Maduro built his regime on a fundamental transactional belief that his political allegiance to Moscow and Beijing would be reciprocated with an immediate security guarantee in the face of an external threat. This belief is now being brutally exposed as a diplomatic fallacy. Vladimir Putin, Maduro's most crucial historical military patron, is catastrophically constrained by his own ambition. Bogged down in the resource-consuming war in Ukraine, Putin simply lacks the capacity and the strategic reserve to open a second front, thousands of miles away in the Western Hemisphere. The Russian military-industrial complex is currently straining to meet its own war demands and cannot spare the functional modern weapon systems, missile stockpiles, or naval assets required to challenge the formidable U.S. fleet in the Caribbean. Furthermore, Putin cannot afford the political cost. Any direct intervention would be read as a declaration of war against the U.S. and would lead to an immediate, crippling escalation of sanctions against Moscow, precisely what the Kremlin is struggling to manage. Therefore, Russia's support is relegated to hollow, symbolic gestures, such as the distant ratification of old strategic partnership agreements. The situation with China and Iran mirrors this calculated self-interest. While ideologically aligned, these powers are governed by cold, pragmatic calculus. China's massive global economic strategy would be fatally undermined by engaging in a military conflict with the U.S. on the South American continent. Beijing's priority is the integrity of its own trade and financial system, not the survival of a distant, volatile regime. The overarching threat of secondary sanctions, wielded relentlessly by Trump, works perfectly here. It ensures that the diplomatic support offered by these allies remains strictly rhetorical, preventing any tangible military or major financial assistance from reaching Caracas. They will watch the intervention, but they will not risk their own economic lifelines to save a partner who has become too risky. This profound isolation is the final strategic blow to Maduro. It confirms that the threat of U.S. power, combined with the reality of his allies' self-interest, is an insurmountable barrier. The Venezuelan military, already struggling with corruption and a chronic lack of spare parts for its Russian-supplied arsenal, now knows that no reinforcements are coming.
The failure of Russia to protect its closest ally in the region serves as a chilling testament to its weakened global influence and the strategic exhaustion imposed by the war in Ukraine. Maduro is left to face the full weight of the U.S. military alone, reliant only on a demotivated, under-equipped army and a poorly trained civilian militia.
We have meticulously analyzed the military plan to neutralize Nicolás Maduro. Now we confront the final, crucial strategic consequence of that operation. A successful intervention in Venezuela is an immediate, decisive blow to the financial heart of Vladimir Putin's war effort. The fate of the conflict in Ukraine is now directly tied to the collapse of global oil prices, a collapse that would fatally undermine the Russian budget and force Putin to the negotiating table. The success of Trump's regime change doctrine in Caracas would instantly trigger a massive, favorable shift in the global energy market. Venezuela possesses the world's largest proven oil reserves, a colossal volume that, once accessible and brought online by Western companies, would inject a significant, immediate surplus of crude onto the world market. The geopolitical significance of this moment cannot be overstated. The sudden surge in Venezuelan supply would inevitably lead to a sharp drop in global oil prices. For Putin, whose entire war budget relies on maintaining high oil revenues, this event would be a catastrophic financial shock. This external supply surge would eliminate the last pillar of Russia's economic defense. The new, cheap Venezuelan crude would immediately and directly displace Russian oil from its remaining key markets, primarily India and Turkey. These nations, which are operating purely on commercial pragmatism, would rapidly switch to the cheaper, unsanctioned Venezuelan supply. This is the strategic nail in the coffin. Russia's already diminished oil revenue, which is suffering from sanctions, high transportation costs, and deep discounts, would be further compressed to a point of critical insolvency. The financial domino effect on the Russian state would be immediate and profound. The loss of hard currency revenue is the singular variable that dictates the length and scope of the war. With oil revenue collapsing, the Kremlin would instantly lose the means to finance its massive budget deficit, replenish its catastrophic equipment losses, and continue paying the salaries of its army. The entire strategy of the war of attrition, which is predicated on outlasting Ukraine, would be rendered impossible. This economic collapse is the ultimate tool of coercion. Putin, trapped by a war he cannot win and an economy he cannot finance, would be forced to choose the only rational off-ramp: peace negotiations on terms dictated by the West and Ukraine. The objective of the Venezuelan operation is thus not solely about anti-narcotics. It is a profound strategic flanking maneuver designed to cut the financial throat of the Russian war machine, thereby accelerating the end of the conflict.